Are you a practitioner helping families plan for their futures? Do you specialise in trusts, inheritance and estate planning? If so, join STEP, the leading global network of trust and estate professionals. Whether you're an expert or just starting out, we're here for every stage of your career. Trial the STEP Journal for free at www.step.org/today and see what membership can offer you.
You're listening to the Today's Wills and Probate podcast, one of the leading sources of information for the wills and probate sector. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todayswillsandprobate.co.uk and follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Wills and Probate podcast. Today we're talking about full service probate solutions. I have Darren Leggett, co-founder and co-managing director of Property Ladder Group on the podcast. And part of the reason why we do the Today's Wills and Probate podcast is to introduce listeners to people and organizations who contribute to the success of the sector. And I think it's fair to say that Darren is one of those individuals. Great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining, Darren.
Thanks for having me, David. That's quite an introduction. Thank you very much. I'm incredibly flattered.
Well, I like to ask people who they are and what they do as kind of an opening question. So perhaps you might tell us a little bit about yourself and about Property Ladder Group as well.
Thank you. So personally, I've been in property the best part of 30 odd years now, which I don't know where that time has gone, David. That's kind of flown by. Always been fascinated in property. My passion for it really started in the 90s through trauma. My grandfather passed away, and my grandmother, as we're the typical southeast family, my nana took on the role of head of the family because she had two daughters, and that meant that she dealt with the probate. Now, unfortunately, whereas the legal element of the process was done really well, there was no complaints there, the property part of the process was done really quite badly, and actually ended up, like I say, quite traumatic for my grandmother, and therefore the knock-on effect was for my mother, my auntie, and indeed me looking at it happening. So the idea was, if I could make a difference to one person that was going through a property process, then that's what I wanted to do. You then fast forward to 2013 initially, and I had this idea about, well, hang on a minute, rather than just being in property, I was working in the new home sector, I should say, at this point. So we were working with Red Row and Barratt Homes, some of the largest house builders in the UK, to help their buyers sell and transition into a new home. And it just suddenly dawned on me, why are people getting help just to move when you've got executors, beneficiaries and solicitors out there who actually could do with the help more urgently? So that's what I do now. It went full circle, David, I think is probably the best way of putting it. The reason for me getting into property was the reason why I'm in property now. And I think working for the legal sector, working for beneficiaries, executors, also for people that are professional deputies or working in trust, it just gives me a sense of purpose. I think is probably the right thing. That if Granddaddy's looking down at me going, yeah, there he is, he's doing what he was meant to do. So I do think that a lot of what I do is maybe purpose-led now. And that was the reason why I'm here doing what I do.
That's really interesting. I described it as a full service probate solution, and you're alluding to not just sort of dealing with the property for the sake of argument, but this starts to sort of look in the round at how we take an estate and support the individuals that perhaps going through a grieving process as well through that whole process, isn't it?
Absolutely right. I mean, I think the most important thing to remember is when you look at probate specifically, somebody's died. And the aftershock of that, the knock-on effect of that to the people that are left behind is in many cases, obviously not all of them, but in many cases it's tragic. And the most paramount thing to remember, whether you're a solicitor or whether you're a service provider or whatever you may be that's connected to that particular moment, is that it should all come down to service. It should all come down to making sure that these people who are entrusting us with the estate matter are being looked after as they should be. So that was always a driving force for me. In doing that and in creating that vision, I have been incredibly lucky because I've met and worked with some fantastic people in the sector, some great role models, some real leaders. And whereas I had this idea that I wanted to bring something to the sector to help the end user, actually what we've been able to do is also create a service that really benefited the legal professionals as well, not just regarding the service that we're able to provide them, but also how we help keep them compliant and mitigate their risks. And it all does come right the way back to the end user, to the person that's been, if you like, serviced, whether that's a lay executor or the beneficiaries.
And just talk me through kind of specifically what some of those services that you offer are. I think one of my favourites is you do things like you'll mow the lawn or you'll change the locks, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's all the bits and pieces nobody really wants to do, David, I think is a good way of explaining it. So from the start, what I did was spend time with sector leaders like Jill Steele at the time, and I think it's pretty fair to say that even though she's been retired for a wee while now, she's infamous. Her legacy will go on and on and on. So I like to drop in that I've worked with Jill as much as possible because I'm incredibly lucky to have done so. But what we did was we looked at common issues that when dealing with a property would need to be resolved. And one of those was, first and foremost, the valuation process and the cost of a RICS, because they're not cheap. And in a lot of cases, the more expensive the property, the more expensive the RICS becomes. So we worked to ensure that we were able to provide a solution that was more cost effective and yet still compliant. So we put together our valuation reports that we have had estates that have contacted us after a RICS has been completed due to maybe a disagreement with the beneficiaries, arguing the value, or maybe a district valuer has got involved after reading the RICS and disagreed with the figures. And we've had council agree with our figures over a RICS, and there was one case where the RICS was almost £9,000 and ours was 150 plus VAT, and council went with our report over the RICS. So I should say, here's a caveat, our report has gone up to the eye-watering figure of £175 plus VAT since then, but you get the idea. At the time it was 150, RICS was almost 9,000, and yeah, they went with our report over the RICS. And that really highlights, David, why we felt, or why I felt that was so important to tackle. So that's one element is the valuation. Then the property sales. This was something I could never really get my head around, was the relationship with estate agents, because that was an essential part. You needed to work with estate agents to sell a property. If you're a solicitor or a member of the public, you didn't really have any choice. But there had to be a better way of doing it, because if you go straight to an estate agent, you're going to sign yourself in for a minimum of 12 weeks. More recently, we're seeing fees having to be paid to release yourself from an agreement because of advertising costs, which blows my mind. You've then got the fact that agents will say, oh yeah, that property's worth, for example, £250,000, and then the very first offer they have come in at 220 they're advising you to take. And it becomes very much about the agent's needs or the needs of the buyer over the needs of the estate and what is actually right for them. So we put together a marketing process that actually enabled us to offer no tie-in, no sale, no fee, and a way of marketing that actually guarantees the highest price with every property we market. And we're able to do that through quite a streamlined multi-agency approach where everything was handled by my team. So on top of all of that, the solicitors don't need to deal with the estate agent anymore, which in 99.9% of the cases, solicitors are jumping through hoops about because they're very happy not to have to deal with them. But again, when we come back to the compliant element, we help mitigate the risk because of the documentation, the paperwork and the evidence that we provide that shows why that figure should be accepted. Which means, again, if a beneficiary or anybody comes forward and says, well, hang on a minute, why did you accept that figure? And could you go through the process with me? The solicitor has third-party independent documentation to back up absolutely everything. We then look at the lawn mowing and the lock changes, which is part of it. There's the clearances, the cleans, general garden and property maintenance, anything that you can imagine, chattel valuations and sales. We do all of that, David, because again, they're things that really take time. And how does the solicitor know they're getting the best quote? Well, you kind of have to trust the person that you're dealing with. So what we say is, look, give it to us. We'll go get the quotes. We'll bat each company off against each other, try and drive the price down. And for that, we charge a very small admin fee. We don't mark anything up. There's no hidden fees or costs. But what that, again, allows the solicitor to do is show that they've got the best price to their client. They've kept fees to a minimum. There's full transparency. And when you look at SRA guidelines and regulations that are in place to the solicitor, one of the very important things is the transparency with fees. So by acting the way that we do, we're enabling the solicitor to follow that code.
Vacancy Legal Recruitment, a refreshingly unique and personal talent agency developed specifically for legal. Dedicated to the sector and with extensive experience working across legal services and legal technology, we bridge the gap between your requirements and top-tier legal talent. Get in touch today and say hello at vacancy.co.uk.
I really like the reference you make to the value of the estate and the fact that it can feel, particularly in probate properties, that this is a buyer's paradise, isn't it? Because, and this is a generalization, but probate properties are often run down because they're often had elderly people live in them. And, you know, particularly when there's perhaps a scenario where a proportion of the estate could be going to charity, for example, and this is a drum that I know the Institute of Legacy Management really beat. The value of the estate is critically important because it has a massive knock-on effect on the value of that gift, for example, and, you know, for beneficiaries, the value of what ultimately ends up in their pocket.
Absolutely right. I think that what we have seen over the last few years is a huge spike, Dave, in the claims made from beneficiaries against law firms and legal professionals, where it has been cited that they have not acted in the best interest of the estate, and therefore they've not received the highest amount of value. Now, I've spoken to insurance professionals, and what we believe jointly is that spike came around about the same time that the cost of living crisis started becoming a thing. And I think what that does is that highlights individuals' dependency on their inheritance. They are either going to be looking to buy their own property or get out of debt with that money, or maybe it's something that they're going to be leaving their own children. There's lots of different dynamics. So the biggest thing for us, and you talk about charitable beneficiaries, I mean, I think they're a great example. We work with multiple charitable beneficiaries, cancer research being one of the largest. It's actually quite simple. A lot of people think that charitable beneficiaries are difficult. A lot of people think, oh my goodness, of course I'm going to get you the best figure. You don't have to question that. And absolutely agree that every solicitor out there that I've ever worked with and have ever met has absolutely gone about their business to do so. The difference is evidence in it. That's the problem. So everything that we do is to evidence that that action has been taken. So if you're a solicitor that's working with a charitable beneficiary, everything that we do is designed to make sure that you can provide evidence that the best price has been achieved for the property, or the associated or related costs are at an absolute minimum. And for us, that's important because, again, we look at compliance, we look at timescales, we look at really trying to streamline the way that the property part of the process is handled, because it's the only unregulated part of the process. Everything else is under that regulated umbrella. So what we do at PLG is we push, and we call it unregulated compliance, which is a term that I kind of come up with last year. It's about making sure that even though that part of the process is not regulated, we are going to keep you compliant throughout the whole thing. And that does ensure that the charity will have evidence that the best price has been achieved, because it would have been. So everything that we're saying to you as a solicitor, and then everything that you're saying to your client, there is a complete backup of documentation, paperwork, forms, you name it, we've got it, because it is important, regardless of who the beneficiary is. That is who the deceased wanted to leave the money to. It is their intention and their will that the highest amount of that estate can be passed on to their beneficiary, and that is exactly what should happen. So yeah, it's important, David.
You've talked about compliance in the course of the discussion. I know that obviously that's a really important element of what you do. What it's also meant is that you've received recognition from the Law Society for the work of Property Ladder Group. Tell me how that kind of came about.
Goodness me, I'll be honest with you, it's one of the best days of my life, David, as a professional. I think when you go into something and you go into it because you're passionate about it, because you genuinely believe in what you're doing and you want to make a difference, to then have an organisation like the Law Society approach not you but your business and say, who do we talk to about forming some sort of a collaboration? I think that has to be the highest level of reward that you can get as a business owner. Bearing in mind, like I said, I went into this at 2013, and I would say that it was a number of years later I approached the Law Society and was like, look, can we collaborate? Is there something we can do? But obviously we had nothing to back that up with. We hadn't been around for very long. Why would you take a gamble with anybody? So when they came to us and said, look, we'd really like you involved in our newsletters, we'd really like you at the conference, we'd like you to be part of what we're doing, I genuinely believe a lot of that come about because of our name and our reputation in the sector, not oversight in the fact that the SRA have started looking at how the property part of the probate process is handled, and in my mind, rightly so. I think that it was inevitable, if I'm honest. I think at some point they had to start looking at that. But I think that when we look at the service that we're providing, what we've done in the sector, our reasons behind it, the reputation that we have, the people that we formed alliances with through good work and service, I like to think that it's because we are the best out there at what we do. Not just the best, but we've got integrity, David. And I think that the passion that comes from it, I'm a passionate guy. I've been told that that's something that people pick up on. So I'd like to think it's a combination of lots of things. I'd like to think it's because we are very, very good at what we do. I'd like to think it is because we're innovators. We lead the sector. We are constantly pushing to create new ideas and new ways of improving the whole of the property part of dealing with probate or court protection or trust. We're doing it for the sector. We're doing it for the solicitors. We're doing it for the legal professionals. And most of all, we're doing it for the end client. And I think that the Law Society just sat down and said, you know what? If you look at all of that, they're the guys to be dealing with. If you're going to form a working relationship with somebody, then they're the people if I was in their shoes, we're the company that I'd want to be working with. I'm trying to put it as nicely
Not
as
that
I
you're
can.
biased or anything.
I'm incredibly biased, David. Do you know what I love? I've got that absolute passion. And even though I've been doing what I'm doing for pushing 13 years, I probably love it more now than what I did back then. And I loved it back then.
We're coming towards the end of the time we have for the discussion. And just to finish off, really, I wonder if you might share some of the common pitfalls you might come across. I mean, you must see a whole swathe of kind of things that happen in and around probate property. And of course, people may choose to instruct the services that you secure for them individually. But what are the pitfalls? And I guess if there's a small sales pitch here, what are the benefits to using a full service operation?
I really don't want to go into the sales pitch, but I will. So one of the pitfalls that we find is, again, I'll go back to the whole mitigating risk. I think that we live in a time and in a society where we've become very Americanized, if I can say that. If we think there's a blame, we'll put in a claim. And I think that, first of all, we shouldn't be having beneficiaries feel that that's what they should be doing. I think that if we can provide a service as a united front in the sector where the customers are feeling that they're being truly looked after, which they really should be, then we kind of overcome that hurdle straight away. So that's a key thing for me. One of the biggest problems we have is making sure that the services that clients think that they're going to get is the service they're going to get. And I think that there are options available that are maybe slightly confusing. So I think that transparency and making sure that real conversations are had. So pitfalls, Dave. I mean, there are obviously the sector's full of different people. And I think that one thing that I'm very passionate about is, look, there's only one PLG. We have pioneered services that we understand and that have proved time and time again our methods work. So when we look at things like compliance, as I keep talking about, we all know that box is ticked. I think pitfalls and problems, I think there's always going to be pitfalls and problems, David. I think that's just life, and I think that you can only ever do what you can do in your best possible knowledge to safeguard yourself and your clients. Again, we look back at who we are in the sector and what we do and the work that we're doing. We don't call the people that use PLG clients, we call them friends of PLG. And we do that really because there's two main reasons, I think. First of all, I hate the word client. It's so, I don't know, surgical almost. It kind of feels like there's no rapport there at all. And I hate that. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a people person. I'm all about relationships, and I'm all about making sure that true relationships are forged and respected. The other thing is, from a friend perspective, if you look at what that word means, you support each other, you look after each other, you're very much arms around each other. Come on, guys, we can do this. And to put it in a sporting analogy, it's like football. You tend to find the most successful football teams, they're great pals off the pitch as well. And that's how I liken our relationship with the people that work with us. It's a friendship. It's an alliance. We're there to make sure that we take that stress and worry off of our friends' shoulders in a time when they need us to, which I know sounds incredibly poetic, but there you have it.
And final question then, Darren, what do you think this sector looks like going forward, and what's next for Property Ladder Group?
A great question. The sector moving forward, certainly from a property perspective, well, looking at it objectively, I think the whole industry has become much more aware, seeing kind of younger people coming through and this whole different outlook on the sector and things like mental health and the way that people work since the pandemic. I do think there's a lot more flexibility, and I do think that has certainly helped improve the way that we all work. For PLG in particular, we are a lot more involved with training. Actually, we're doing a lot more webinars, we're doing a lot more coaching when it comes to problem solving when handling estate matters and looking at alternative solutions. So it's something that I personally am really enjoying, is the interaction between solicitors and legal professionals, and actually helping answer questions that they may have. And it's interesting because the more webinars I do and the more solicitors that I speak to, the more questions that I get thrown that kind of help me then come up with new ideas to pioneer and new services to help the sector. So it's this wonderful cycle of speaking to people about what you do, helping them overcome some of their problems, being told of a new problem that maybe I've never even imagined before, me going off and coming up with a way of helping them deal with it. So it's great. And I really think that that's going to be something we're doing more of. We are at the Law Society again in 2026. That's already been confirmed. And I got some really great feedback, David, actually, which I'm going to share with you. I have a star rating of 4.2 was the feedback from the attendees of the 2025 conference, private client conference. And when you think of 4.2 out of 5 stars, I'll take that.
Very good. Well, I don't know what star rating you'll get from our listeners out of the podcast today, but I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you, Darren, and really appreciate you spending some time talking through probate property solutions. Thanks so much for joining.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me, David.
The Today's Wills and Probate podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todayswillsandprobate.co.uk. My thanks to Darren. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.